reading my story, Chasing Rainbows. Chapter 15. Farewells and Disclosure. Joseph soon set about sorting things out at Harbach's. It was more or less running smoothly now, with a bit of common sense and guidance on his part. He realized his father was fast losing control of things. Once he had governed with an iron hand, but it seemed those days were gone. Joseph pondered how best to have things out with the old gentleman. Now, as they sat together in his father's office, Joseph produced a bottle of malt whisky and set 2 glasses out. "Share a top with me, son?" He raised an inquiring eyebrow. He sensed a certain tension between them. Joseph accepted his drink somewhat reluctantly, and Geoffrey settled back in his leather armchair, gestured for his son to be seated, but Joseph continued to stand. "I thank you, son, for helping me to put things straight at the mill." He raised his glass to Joseph. The young man stared at his father askew. "Father, have you any idea how much business you were about to lose? A few more weeks and you would have been in dire straits, make no mistake," Joseph replied. Geoffrey shrugged. "Happen I'm getting too old to hold the reins any more, lad." "Well, changes will have to be made, and fast, if you want to keep things running smoothly. You need a new manager to run the place for a start. That young man is losing you no end of business, and profits are down," he informed his father, who was reaching for the whisky bottle again. He poured himself a generous drink and offered Joseph another. He shook his head. "Don't you think you've had enough?" Geoffrey chuckled amicably. "Oh, let me be the judge of that, lad." Joseph stared at his father, an odd look in his eyes. "Just as you once tried to judge me, father," he replied quietly. Geoffrey glanced up in surprise. "Now, just what do you mean by that remark?" "I should think it was plain enough. You thought it was right for me to take over at Harwood Textile Mill and marry Baxter's granddaughter to keep things sweet between yourselves. Never mind, I was in love with another girl who just happened to be pregnant with my child." Joseph's voice had risen an octave. Clearly shocked, Geoffrey gasped at his son's announcement. He pressed on. "Oh, no, that wasn't something you could allow, was it, father?" He paused, his eyes scornful. "God only knows how you managed it, but you sent this precious girl out into the world without a brass farthing. Now it's payback time. I demand to know the truth. God damn it, you owe me that much," Joseph concluded, his face like thunder. Geoffrey stood up, clenching his fist, which he waved into the air. "Now see here, lad, it wasn't like that," he proclaimed in anger. "So tell me, how was it, father? I'm in the dark here." Joseph was trembling with rage as he waited to hear Geoffrey's explanation. "All right, son, give me a chance to explain. When the lass told me she was with child, all I could think of was how you stood to lose everything. Happen I was hasty. I don't know. I couldn't think straight. I had old man Baxter on my back. I had already made up my mind to tell him I knew you would accept his offer of taking over the mill at Harwood. He was planning to retire somewhere in Europe. I don't know, maybe have shares in a wine plantation." He ran his hands through his hair. "Baxter helped me to get started in this business. They were only a baby. Listen, Joseph, I realize now I owed you some clarification when you were old enough to understand, and for that I'm sorry. In those days I had naught but the clothes I stood up in. Your mother was frantic with worry for you. Jonathan Baxter drew up a partnership between us legally, so we each had equal shares in J. Baxter's mill. set me up in business at Parback. Naturally, I jumped at the chance. He set the wheels in motion, and as time progressed, I prospered well enough to purchase Parback. He paused, produced his handkerchief from his jacket pocket, and mopped the perspiration from his brow. Joseph waited impatiently for him to continue. Baxter was a shrewd businessman, and when he knew what I intended, he demanded an equal share in this place. After his past generosity, I felt I could hardly refuse. When I was in a position to purchase this place, it was more than I ever dreamed possible. Things prospered well. He paused again and took a gulp of whiskey, loosened his collar and necktie. By heck, it was stuffy in here. Moving towards the window, he opened it a fraction more. Joseph felt a stab of pity for putting his father through this, yet he deserved to know the truth. "Go on, father," he pressed. "Before plans were set in motion for thee to become legal owner of the textile mill, Baxter had come to tell me of his plans to retire, branch out in other directions, set himself up in the wine industry, employ others to run things, you understand, and reap a good profit from proceeds. He put proposition forward which entitled you to become sole owner of J. Baxter's mill and to inherit his shares of Parback upon my demise. At time I could hardly believe my ears. He wanted you to own his mill and plus sell his shares in Carbacks to you. What did Baxter stand to gain from this generous offer? I asked myself. Of course there was a price to pay, as I knew indeed there must be. He liked and respected you and trusted you to be a level-headed businessman. His granddaughter, Victoria, was a fine lass, but not blessed with fairness of face. Jonathan told me of her failure to attract a suitable beau. He was anxious for her to marry and produce a son who would inherit it all one day. If you agreed to marry Victoria, you stood to gain so much from his proposition. In fact, both families stood to gain from a marriage agreement, if you could be persuaded to agree to his terms. Of course, there were legal technicalities to discuss, but at the time I could only think of rosy future for thee, son. Surely you must know that." Geoffrey stared at Joseph, somewhat in awe. Joseph was like a dog with a bone, though he could not let matters lie. Joseph had been pacing the room whilst he told the tale. Now he drew level with his father, his face tense. "So how did you persuade Jeff to agree to your terms?" he demanded, his voice raised in fury. Geoffrey glowered at his son, his own anger mounting. "Now see here, lad, it were all around Parbacks at time. This foolish clandestine romance between pair of thee. I couldn't stand by and see you ruin your life through one foolish mistake. Not when I could persuade her to accept offer of cottage and money in post office account. She accepted readily enough when she knew of your impending marriage to—" Too late. He realized he had gone too far. Joseph grabbed his father's arm. "What did you say?" he whispered hoarsely. His face suddenly drained of colour. Geoffrey was cornered, and he knew it. "All right, I wasn't honest with her, but how can I lie to protect thee? She wasn't right for you, son. You deserved to do better for yourself. Why was it so stuffy in here? He could scarcely breathe. Happen I should have been the judge of that. I should never have believed you, that's for sure," was his son's curt reply. He felt sickened by his father's confession. His voice rough, Geoffrey told him, "I gave her my cottage on edge of Moot Hill." His face like thunder, Joseph turned on his heel and strode purposely from the room. Geoffrey sat down heavily upon his leather chair and knew he was beaten. His sins had finally caught up with him. Leaning forward, he reached for the whiskey bottle and poured himself a generous measure.